And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. Man, do we have a lot of stuff to talk about on today's show. But we have to begin with yesterday. I took a lot of heat for taking off a little bit early to go to the Quilts of Valor ceremony that was held at the Sheridan VA. Sorry about that, but you know, man, son-in-laws have certain duties, and you just have to go with it. But it was a fantastic ceremony, I have to tell you. So there were 5 Sheridan veterans that were honored by Quilts of Valor, and if you're unfamiliar with what that organization does, they do exactly what it sounds like. They make quilts for veterans. And yesterday there were 5 of them, the Master Chief being one of them. And so I went and videoed the whole thing, and I wrote an article last night and posted it to the Open Range Record so that you could see what one of these ceremonies looks like if you've never been at one of them. And let's see here. Here we go. So check this out. This is the piece that's on the Open Range Record. It's the main story right now. Shortly after today's episode, it'll move down, but it'll still be at the top where you can see it. But let me just show it to you. And so here is, let's see here. Yeah, here we go. All right. So these are the 5 guys, and the Master Chief is on the far left. And if you scroll down, the article tells you, oh, there's one of my ads that showed up. Fantastic. But in the article, and let me just read to you just a little bit of the piece. Quote, among those honored was Master Chief Jim Sturdivant, whose distinguished career in the United States Navy spanned 27 years. During his military service, Sturdivant traveled extensively throughout the world, gaining experiences that left a lasting impression on him. And here's what he said. Now, this is in his statement that he provided to the Quilts of Valor, but just listen to this. Quote, the best thing I take from my Navy service is all the places overseas that I was able to visit. Some of the places I visited were Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam, Naples, Italy, Nice, France, Rhodes, and Spain. The cultures and earning power of those countries are all very different. We must consider ourselves lucky to have what we have and the freedoms we have here in the United States. Well said, Master Chief. Well said. So I encourage you to go look at this piece. It'll tell you a little bit about the Quilts of Valor and what happened yesterday. And I also attached videos. There's the Master Chief receiving his quilt. And then the other 4 gentlemen, there's the videos of those. So you can go look at those. But I encourage you to do that if you've never seen one of those ceremonies, or if you don't know anything about it. There you go. There's your chance to go learn something about it. It was a great event, and happy that I could attend. However, Had to cut the program short. So sorry about that. But, hey, a man's got to do, a son-in-law's got to do what a son-in-law's got to do. So let's begin with some politics from around the state. Yesterday, there was a couple of different videos posted. One of them from an event in Kemmer, and one of them from politics in the park down in, I believe it was in Casper. But the bummer about that video is only half of it has audio. So there was quite a bit of it that didn't get recorded. So let's begin with what happened down in Kemmerer. Representative Scott Heiner, who is also the majority floor leader, got up and he gave his little spiel, and he spoke about bringing more the possibility of more energy to Wyoming, coal-fired power plants, those sorts of things. And he also mentioned some of the failures of the Mark Gordon. There was one whole energy project that it was a Japanese company, and Mark Gordon wouldn't even meet with them. And so they decided to go elsewhere. But anyway, after that, there was and this is kind of a reoccurring theme throughout the entire state. Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome always shows up. Now, I'm going to play this video for you, but I want you to ask yourself one question. Is there one reason at all mentioned why whatever the Freedom Caucus did was bad? Is there any one of them? Not just one thing, or was it just Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome? Let me play the video for you, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's see here. Where was it? Okay, here we go. Yeah. Heiner and Heine.
Plants aren't the same as they were 80 years ago. Science has advanced. So working with Utah, they're going to pay for half of it, and Wyoming will pay for half of it, and it will be located in southwest Wyoming. You'll see an announcement probably in the next 2 or 3 months. We're going to try to get $1.25 million from Wyoming and $1.25 million from Utah to do the feed study, the engineering studies, and then the DOE will hopefully step in and help us fund this plant. Now, one of the big issues, none of the bankers want to finance coal-fired power plants. It's a dirty waste. They're afraid once Trump is out of office, the next administration will shut it down. So I went to Washington 2 weeks ago, and I met with the Secretary of Commerce, Lutman, and I brought that concern up. I said, we can't get financing because there's no time. He says he's got a plan. I wanted a backstop. He says what he'll do is put an insurance policy on this plant. So if anybody wants to shut it down, all the investors get their money back plus some. So I'm working on this. I want to bring life back to the Kemmer mine, and I want to do things that's going to help the citizens of Wyoming and here in Southwest Wyoming.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Hold on just a second. So let's talk about that. One of the big challenges in Wyoming is bringing life back to our existing industries. With the previous administration, a lot of them went out of business, not just here in Wyoming, but all across the United States. But with the RMPs, the resource management plans from the federal government, there are a lot of places in Wyoming that like in Kemmerer, that mine's just shut down right now. And so Scott Heiner is absolutely correct. Now let me just ask you a question, and then we'll get to Mr. Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome. So is it better to support the businesses that we already have, or is it better, do you think, to bring in another business? Now, here's why I posed that question, because yesterday on the podcast, this is exactly what I talked about. That the mentality of the current administration is that you have to have government involved. And what happens is the government gets a stranglehold on business, and they suck every bit of life out of that business, and then they wonder why it goes under. And then their solution is not to back off the regulations that they impose, but rather to bring in another business. You see, I can't get blood out of this turnip over here, so let's try another one. It makes much more sense to just support the industries that we have here with a low amount of regulation, a low amount of taxes, and just let them run their business. I mean, that was Wyoming before, before Mark Gordon decided to stop supporting those industries, even though he's traveling all around the state saying how pro-energy he is, when we know that that's really not the truth. I mean, this is the guy that was the one of the heads of the Sierra Club. He's the guy that fought coal bed methane development in northeast Wyoming. So, I mean, make sure that you do your research on these guys. So, all right, that was Scott Heiner. Now, this is the guy who was running against him, and he was the clerk of district court. And just listen, remember my question. Is there one thing he mentions that he disagrees with? Yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
Okay.
But here he comes.
I understand Mayor Beckman's not here, but we have the old pal mayor. Oh, yes.
Ken Roberts.
Good grief.
Oh, yeah. Boy, he's got some supporters in the crowd, doesn't he?
Sorry about that.
That's the way it usually happens. My name is Kenneth D. Roberts. I'm running for House District 18. Everybody pretty much knows me here because I spent a lot of time in this building. Matter of fact, I got married in this building. And it happens that where I got married at is a whole bunch of antiques now, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But what you're going to see is, and Scott and I are going to have totally different visions of what we think of Wyoming. Scott is a proud member and leader of the Freedom Caucus. I'm not. I believe that Wyoming needs to work with everybody. I believe that, and I've had a history of working with everybody. You're elected clerk of district court for 32 years. I've served in the capacity of city, county, and state. I've served on the Wyoming Board of Parole, where I was the chairman for 2 years. Currently right now, I'm on the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission. And it's the best commission in the world. But,
oh, yeah, I bet it is, because you're on it.
I'm very proud of it. But I think Scott's right. He does have to defend that 25%. I think that if you give 25% here, then you take it from there. And it kind of reminds me of where they, like Obamacare, it's like, we'll just throw it out there and let the locals and the county figure it out at that point. And I think that's what they did. I think they took 25% and said, figure it out now. Yay, look at us, we cut 25%. It doesn't work that way in Wyoming. We're a proud...
No. Cutting. Hold on. I can't take it. I can't take it. There's more to it, and we'll get to it in just a second. But cutting taxes, apparently, according to this guy, doesn't work the same way in Wyoming as it does everywhere else. No, that's terrible. What they did, they cut 25% and hosed the rest of the state. The truth is, my friends, that 25% reduction on residential property taxes did not amount to very much at all. In fact, most counties saw single-digit decreases. The highest one, I think, was 6%, and that happened to be here in Sheridan County. The rest of the state, the decrease, and a 25% reduction on your residential property taxes is a big deal if you're a homeowner. But does it really equate to that much of a reduction in the overall revenue for the county? No. At most, it was a 6% reduction. And here's the way that I describe it in Sheridan. Now, let's say that 50%, the ballot amendment goes through. Let's say that, and I think that it probably will. That's a 50% reduction. When you do all of the math on that one, at most, it is a 10% reduction in county revenue. And that 10% is right here in Sheridan County. But if you add up the flower pot, which was $3 million, all of the money that was given away, your tax dollars that were given away to nonprofits, absolutely unconstitutionally, and you add in a couple of other smaller things, that's 10%. That's it. It's no more than that. And most of the other counties are not going to see that much of a reduction. Is it a big deal for homeowners? Yeah, absolutely it is. But residential property taxes only amounts to a small percentage of the overall revenue that your county gets. That's absolutely the truth. Most of the revenue comes from businesses. In our counties that have coal, oil, and natural gas, most of the tax revenue comes from those. It doesn't come from homes. So this guy, even though he may have been the clerk of district court, has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to property taxes. But let's continue. He's going to have more Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome in just a second.
We're a proud state, and I hope that I can represent you. If it's Freedom Caucus you want, I'm not your man. I won't do that. I'm not going to take my orders from Washington. I'm going to take my orders from Wyoming. I give my campaigns Wyoming first always. That's where my heart is. I have 2 kids I lost one to South Dakota. I have one that lives down the street from me. I've been here. You're all my friends. You're my family. You're my neighbors. So I appreciate your vote, and God bless everybody. God bless this great state.
Okay, yeah. He's right about that. God bless this great state. But now answer my question. Was there one example that he used why the Freedom Caucus is bad? No, not a single one. He does say, I won't take my marching orders from Washington, D.C., which is a load of bullcrap anyway. There's absolutely, it is not true. I can't tell you how many people I've had on this program that will tell you, yeah, that doesn't happen. I interviewed the head guy, Andy Roth, and I asked him, are you the Washington, D.C. overlord that's telling everybody how to vote minute by minute? And all he did was laugh. The truth is, that is not true at all. It is a bullcrap lie. But, that's the only thing that he can say. The truth is, if you ask most people, so tell me, you got Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome. Give me one example, one thing that the Freedom Caucus actually did that you disagree with, and then we can talk. And most people have no idea. And those who do know will give you just a very misinterpreted evaluation of what actually happened. The only thing that a lot of these redcoats are running on is Freedom Caucus bad. It is no different than Orange Man bad. That's their entire campaign strategy. So, Scott Heiner, he shouldn't have any problem defeating this guy. All he's got to do is keep talking about the good things that conservatives did in the in the House of Representatives. And the other thing, the other narrative that's floating around, which this one's as laughable as the others, is that if you're a conservative, that means you're Freedom Caucus. There's a piece in the Cow Pie this morning saying about how at a Hot Springs GOP meeting, a bunch of them walked out, and let me just pull this up for you. I didn't pull this for today, but we may as well talk about it again. And you can probably guess who wrote this thing. It's Claire McFarland. But if you talk to her, she's entirely fair. Yeah, watch any of those interviews. That's actually what got me going on yesterday's podcast. But anyway, here is the. I'll see if I can find the right. Yeah, here we go. This is the very beginning of the Claire McFarland piece. It's entitled, Hot Springs County GOP members walk out after failed vote to drain account. Here's the opening three or four lines. Quote, in Hot Springs County, the divide in Wyoming's active Republican political base is actually a chasm. That breach usually falls between the GOP faction more aligned with the Wyoming Freedom Caucus and the faction that tends to oppose it. It surfaced Monday night at the Hot Springs County Republican Party meeting. All right, and you can read the rest of the article. But the narrative coming from the media and the Redcoats is that if you're a conservative, that means you're aligned with the Freedom Caucus. The truth is, most of the conservatives in the House of Representatives are not members of the Freedom Caucus. And just because they happen to think alike does not mean that they're members of the Freedom Caucus. It is absolute insanity. And even to think that argument is going to work, or that it even is an argument, it just tells you the vapidness of some of these candidates. They just believe that Wyoming citizens are going to be persuaded by Orange Man bad again. And that's all they got, my friends. To be a member of the Freedom Caucus, you actually have to be in the House of Representatives. And it only happens after your first year, and it's by invitation only. So anybody who is not in that Wyoming House of Representatives is not a member of the Freedom Caucus. And just because you happen to be conservative does not necessarily mean that you're aligned with them. I mean, it's a media narrative that has been created so that liberal redcoats have something to run on. All right, now let's move to Casper. Well, no, actually, let's not move to Casper. Stay where you're at. Casper's too windy. But let's move our conversation to Casper, where they had a politics in the park. And this is a piece from County 17 News. And it's entitled, 4 GOP U.S. Senate Candidates Face Off at Casper's Politics in the Park. And I quote, 4 Republican candidates for the U.S. Senate seat held by retiring Senator Cynthia Lummis met in Casper on Wednesday for the second Politics in the Park event of the 2026 session. And those people running, and we'll eventually, hopefully, have all these guys on the program. But it's Harriet Hageman, former Judge John Holtz, rancher and former Kirby Mayor Sam Mead, and Mills businessman Jimmy Skogard. Fielded 16 questions covering everything from foreign policy to local land management issues during the forum at Washington Park. The evening began with a question about how the candidates' core values align with universal freedoms. Hageman, who previously worked as a water, natural resource, and constitutional attorney, leaned on her legal background and said the people are in charge of the government. Quote, our forefathers recognized that our natural rights come from God. They do not come from the government. We always have to remember that we are the free ones, and we are the ones in charge in terms of our government and making sure that we're protecting those constitutional rights for every single citizen in this country. Now, let's just talk about the question just for a second. How do your values line up with universal rights? Okay, so you have rights by virtue of you being human that were given to you by God. And yes, those are universal. Everybody has them. You have the right to defend yourself. You can say whatever you want. I mean, most of them are listed in the Bill of Rights. But the narrative universal rights is one that has been pushed by the American left. Well, actually, the left, it's not just the American left. It's, the progressivism for a really long time, is that all of these rights are universal. And it leads you to believe that the rights that are enshrined in the Constitution apply to everyone. Well, that's not true at all. The only people that have constitutional rights are United States citizens, not illegal aliens, not people with a visa, not people with a green card. To have and enjoy constitutional liberties, you actually have to be a citizen. Now, in other countries, do people have the right to defend themselves? Sure, of course they do. But the government they live under doesn't allow them to do that. Do you have a right to free speech? Yes, absolutely. Everybody does. But if you live in a country like China, do you have a right to free speech? Yeah, technically. But you also have a government that's going to punish you for it. You see, the only place that those rights are guaranteed is here in the United States. So, I mean, I realize that it's a nuanced argument, but it's one that's important because it gets used and almost every single time when the issue of illegal immigration comes up. But these are universal rights, David. Yeah, well, they are, but they're only guaranteed here in the United States. And no, if you come into the country illegally, you do not get to enjoy constitutional rights because you're not a citizen. Okay, so there was one thing, and you know what? Let me play the first video I've got. Well, the only video I've got from the Politics in the Park because the audio did not work for most of the video. But let me go ahead and just play this first one, and you can get a feel for what was happening down in Casper. Here you go.
Yes. All right. How will a repeal of the roadless rule affect the outdoor hunting and recreation economy?
Okay, so the question is really hard to hear, but it's about the roadless rule. This is one of the problems when you have an event outside is the audio is always really challenging. But the question is about the roadless rule, and they'll go down the table.
And what are your thoughts on the sale of public lands?
So the repeal of the roadless rule will actually make access better. Keep in mind that the roadless rule was adopted by the Forest Service on Bill Clinton's on his way out the door by the Clinton administration. Under FLIPMA, the Wilderness Act, the Wyoming Wilderness Act, the National Forest Management Act, it is Congress that makes the laws about how we manage our natural resources, including our national forests. So what that means is that the way that the law is actually written is that every national forest has its own resource management plan or land management plan. So whether it's the Shoshone or it's the Medicine Bow or it's the Bridger Teton, every single one of them has a specific designation about roadless. So what that means is what a lot of people up here have previously said when they've talked about the issue, and that is local involvement and local participation. So what happens when they redo or they're modernizing these various land management plans is they will address roadless areas, they will address wilderness areas, they will address grazing and oil and gas development and rights of ways and all of those things. But it's done with the Forest Service on a more local basis rather than coming out of Washington, D.C.
All right, so hold on. Let's just pause just for a second. Harriet's absolutely right, as she almost always is. So the roadless rule is the one that it didn't necessarily create the wilderness areas, so like Cloud Peak Wilderness, which is above Buffalo, but it was a rule that prevented motorized travel. So you couldn't have any roads in any of these wilderness areas. And the question is, who knows better how to handle our land in Wyoming? Is it the federal government? Is it rules that are written by people who've probably never even really don't even know where the state of Wyoming is? Or is it people who are experts within the state of Wyoming? And what you're going to hear, particularly from Sam Mead, and you got a little bit in the video before you get to him. But you'll hear that, well, you know, we're the ones that are the experts, but the federal government has to manage all these lands because the state is just not able to do that. And I mean, if you realize the contradiction in that argument, it's we're the experts here and we know better how to handle, you know, Wyoming than the federal government. But when it comes to federal land, it's no, we have to let the federal government handle it. You see, the arguments on federal lands. And, you know, I mean, there's a couple different groups that are really trying to make this a campaign issue, and certainly Sam Mead is. But just listen to what he says. Now, first is John Holtz, and then we'll go to Sam Mead.
My statement is simple. Do not turn Wyoming into Disneyland.
Coming from Jackson, I think it might be a little bit late for that. But, you know, it occurs to me there's not a lot of coherency in this argument that we need to have roadless rule driven by local communities, but then have up to 2 million acres of land throughout the West sold to the highest bidder by the federal government. Those things are not compatible to me. We can't be selling off our public land, the things that we love here in Wyoming, the things that are near and dear to us, things that our kids enjoy, that we enjoy. Everybody standing out there today has enjoyed public lands, and I want to make sure we protect it.
All right. Well, here's Jimmy.
The roadless rule. I wrote a little post about this one. I think I called it the nothing burger. And what it talks about is releasing 11% of federal lands in Wyoming to roads and encroachment and, you know, bugging the animals. You know, we have a tourism industry here in Wyoming that we need to protect. And part of that is the trails and things that folks go on in those roadless areas. That 11%, it's a small portion. I think it's 3.3 million acres out of 58 million acres total, or the 9.9 million acres in the Forest Service that are protected here in Wyoming. And yeah, it's a nothing burger to distract us from the economy, to distract us from the price of gas, to distract us from a war that we don't like, and to distract us from child sex predators.
Oh, yeah, this is a scary one. Okay, so my point in showing you that is to point out the contradiction in the argument. So on the one hand, it's the state has to run everything. We're the experts here. We know how better. We can't take our marching orders from Washington, D.C. Not that really is a thing, because it's not true at all. And then the other side is, but wait, when it's public lands, the federal government has to manage it. Well, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of impacts that happened with that. With Clinton's roadless rule, there was a huge uptick in the amount of forest fires. You know why? Because you can't log up there. You can't clear out all the deadfall that happens. And so there are places in the Bighorn Mountains where you can't even walk. I mean, that it is impossible to walk through the timber because there's so much deadfall. You know what that is called? Kindling, right? One lightning strike and it goes up. The only way that we can continue to have these awesome public lands that we have, that we can have the wildlife populations that we have, is to conservatively manage them, not preserve them. You see, there's a difference between conservation and preservation. All these public lands, people, and you heard Jimmy Skogard and Sam Mead say, "Oh no, the federal government. I mean, they know better." Well, that's preservation, right? That is removing human contact from that area. Well, let's just take wildlife, for example. If there was no wildlife management strategy in Wyoming, populations would have to control themselves. Well, in any population, in any species, when the population gets too high, disease takes over. It happens with every animal, including us. So in ungulates, it's chronic wasting disease. In fish, it's called whirling disease. Yeah, they actually swim in a circle. Rabbits, it's tularemia. I mean, but every population has that. And one of the ways that we can control the spread of disease is through hunting. Now, do we hunt the elk population to extinction? No, that'd be stupid. But what we do issue is hunting permits so that we can manage the population of those animals. And I know that public lands, that's a big hot button issue, because everybody likes to go up in the mountains and enjoy the national forest. But you have to understand the other ancillary issues that are attached to it: conservation, management. And under Clinton's roadless rule, a lot of that came to a screeching halt. It's one of the reasons why that we've had forest fires. And when we do have them, there was one right up above Sheridan last summer that was, it burned the whole face of the mountain. And now I'm not saying that was entirely because of the roadless rule. What I am saying though is that once a lightning strike happens and you have a whole bunch of deadfall, it's pretty hard to control the fire. And so I guess if you're anti-forest fire, you need to be anti-roadless rule. All right, so we've gone a little bit long. Let's go ahead and take our first break. And when we continue with the program, I've got a couple comments from Sam Mead that I'm very, very curious about. And when I get him on the program, I'm definitely going to ask him. But we'll cover that when we come back. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
This is Brent Bean, a Republican for governor. Wyoming families know what matters: law enforcement, emergency services, and supporting strong schools, agriculture, and energy production. But state government keeps growing while priorities fight for resources. That has to change. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending and priority problem. Vote for me on August 18th, and I'll put Wyoming priorities first. I'll return taxes to you, the taxpayer, and make Wyoming number one. Paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, Wyoming's big voice on the right. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Stick with me. At the top of the hour, we'll be joined by Representative Ann Lucas. She's running for re-election. As always, I'm sure she has plenty to say, but we'll talk to her at 9 o'clock, so don't go anywhere. All right, so before the break, we were talking about this politics in the park in Casper. And again, I was really bummed out that a lot of the audio did not come through on the video. Perhaps if you were there and you recorded it, let me know, because there's a couple of things in there, one of which I'm going to talk about here in just a second, that I really would love to have the audio of. So if you were there and you recorded it, or if you know if there's a better recording out there, please let me know. Hit me up in comments. Oh, and by the way, if you were there at Politics in the Park, tell me in the comments your thoughts about it, because there's a lot of stuff in there, way too much for me to handle on. And we could spend the whole 2 hours talking about it. They asked 16 different questions, and frankly, I can't imagine being a candidate up there. But what do you do, man? It's a forum, and people come to the park to hear politics, and I suppose you sit there through all 16 of them. Wow. And let's just talk about my philosophy on this whole thing. I think that forums are kind of a waste of time. And if you watched the part you could hear in that Politics in the Park, one person would start the question, and then the rest of them would respond. And the problem with that is, well, you could attack the person that started out, and they don't even get a chance to rebut it, right? You can say anything that you want, and then they don't get a chance to come back and say, now, hold on a minute. Let me just address that. That's why forums are a load of crap, in my opinion. We don't learn anything from a candidate with a forum. The only thing you know is that they have an opinion, and that's it. Beyond that, there's nothing else there. We should, however, have debates where there's back and forth and candidates can challenge each other, and there's time to rebut, what the other person said. I mean, that's a storied tradition in politics, and it's one that we've gotten away from because a lot of people are scared of conflict. They don't like being confronted. It's very different, and it's funny. So I sent out a number of emails to different candidates. And both conservative and perhaps not so conservative people, because I want to learn about them. I want you to learn about them. But so far, there's only one of them in the last batch of emails I sent out that responded, and that was David Hill over in Park County. I'm looking forward to talking to him. I'm sure it's going to be a great conversation. And, there's this Gail Simmons has this narrative going around that apparently every interview that I do, it's an ambush. Yeah, you shouldn't come on David's program because he's just going to abuse you. Really? Ask Jimmy Skogard. I disagreed with everything that guy said, and we still had a pleasant interview. Or Gail Simmons herself. And by the way, that post that of the little back and forth I had with her, well over 17,000 views. Gail, perhaps you shouldn't lie about people, namely me. But we'll cover that a little bit later. But let's get back to this politics in the park. I keep going, off topic here. But anyway, so there was a question in the forum about the tax cap. And let's see here. So I'm going to skip a little bit here, but it says, quote, Holtz and Meade both suggested removing the Social Security tax cap to generate necessary revenue. Holtz said, quote, if you have someone making $5 million a year, they're paying about 2% in Social Security versus somebody that's making $50,000 a year paying 6.2% and the employer paying the same. We need to fix that. Okay, everybody should just pay the same. I mean, if we're going to have taxes, they need to be fair across the board. I don't really want to get into that. But here's what Meade said. Listen very closely to this. Quote, increasing the top marginal tax bracket will not make a meaningful difference in the amount of revenue our government collects. He's absolutely right about that. When you increase taxes on the wealthy, it doesn't really generate revenue. That's just a line that the left uses. Tax the rich, evil billionaires. I mean, it's that whole thing. He continues, what I do have a problem with is someone inheriting billions of dollars and never contributing to our society and our communities. Those pools of wealth accumulate a tremendous amount of power, and I think that's undemocratic. Excuse me, Mr. Meade. And by the way, I want you to come on this program. I do want you to address this because I find, and it's County 17 news, so more than likely they didn't print the rest of what you said. But what I have here is shocking that evidently if you have personal wealth, that's not your property. No, that's undemocratic that your dad made a whole crap load of money and he left it to you. That's not the government's business, and democracy doesn't even play into any of it. Mr. Meade, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got a pretty good name too. Is it undemocratic that you have a well-known name in the state? Is it undemocratic that you're running for the U.S. Senate hoping that your last name is going to get you elected? It's not undemocratic, my friend. Democracy doesn't even play into it. And by the way, we live in a republic. We don't live in a democracy. But to suggest that simply because people have a lot of wealth, that's undemocratic, that's their personal property. The government doesn't have any say in that. If you are a Republican at all, you must believe in private property rights. That's one of the that is one of the founding principles of this country. It's what separates us from being a serf. Serfs did not have private property. They lived on the king's property. The definition one of the main key differences between a citizen and a serf is the ownership of private property. That you can own the fruits of your own labor, that you can work hard, that you can accumulate wealth, or that your dad can work hard and accumulate wealth. It doesn't really matter, and that belongs to you. That nobody else has a claim on your personal property. Nobody is entitled to the fruits of your labor. And so, Mr. Meade, I really want you to come on the program and explain this because I think it's at least a distinct possibility that County 17 News misquoted you. But what they have here is a little shocking. And let me just read it one more time. What I do have a problem with is someone inheriting billions of dollars and never contributing to our society or our communities. That's their personal choice. If you want to contribute to your society, that's your choice. No one can force you to do that. If you want to be the rich guy with the castle on the hill that never does anything for his community, that's your right. That's your personal property. Nobody else is entitled to that. These pools of wealth accumulate in a tremendous amount of power, and I think that's undemocratic. Why? Because somebody is wealthy and they're able to do things that you can't do or that somebody else can't do? It's not undemocratic, my friend. That's free market capitalism. That's the way our system works. And if you start injecting politics into it and saying that just because you're wealthy, you're somehow destroying our republic, and notice I didn't say democracy, I said republic, then you're not going to have a republic at all, my friend. that it is not going to exist anymore. When you start taking other people's money, they leave. That's what's happening in New York City right now, that you have a socialist mayor who has come right out in the open and said he is going to take people's property. Well, what do you suppose those people are going to do? They're going to put it up for sale, and they're going to get the heck out of Dodge. Rightfully so. But it's, I'm really concerned about this. So if you're watching, Sam, come on the program. Let's clear this up. I really want to. All right, so we've got about 15 minutes left. Let's see here. Yeah, I've got enough time to do this. I really love op-eds, letters to the editor. In fact, I'm going to publish one today from a guy over in Cody. But I found this one I better save this. Yeah. All right, we'll put that over there. All right, so I found this letter to the editor in the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, and it's entitled, "Local Officials Seem Driven More by Revenue Than by Community." And I know. The title of it might be getting the hairs up on, standing up on the back of your neck, but just listen. Quote, "In light of current events, we, the voters, must use due diligence to cast our votes in the coming elections." I absolutely agree. Nationally, things like lying, cheating, stealing, adultery, sexual assault, excessive drinking, corruption, and graft used to be a deterrent to holding office. Yeah, I lived in Virginia when Bob McDonnell was running for governor, and that whole thing blew up. Oh, he cheated on his wife. It turns out it wasn't true, but that was in every paper. And we're only talking like, let's see here, early 2000s. So, it wasn't really that long ago. But think about it. When an extramarital affair came up as the October surprise, that was almost a disqualifier. And it wasn't that long ago. Being qualified for office no longer matters. Caring for the people no longer matters. Representing their constituents no longer matters. Well, I don't know that that's entirely true. I think that, the person who wrote this, and I won't out them by name, but I understand the sentiment. I don't know that I necessarily agree with your conclusions. The author continues. Locally, those in office seem to be making decisions not in the best interest of local citizens, but in consideration of the revenue that can be attained. Data centers, apartments, gambling facilities are running rampant. The fire that occurred off of Converse Avenue should have opened people's eyes to the concentration of building that could have been a bigger disaster had it been in the occupied units. Maybe the decision makers need to slow down a little bit and reconsider the amount of designs of the developments and think more about the quality they are bringing to the community. I can't disagree with that. I think when local officials get focused on the amount of money that they can steal out of other people's pockets and to pad government coffers, that's a problem. I mean, that's not the government's job to accumulate wealth. And we do a bunch of that in Wyoming. I mean, when the Redcoats were in charge, it was their favorite thing to do, to take hundreds of millions of dollars and sock it away. Never once asking where that, if those extra hundreds of millions of dollars they had, if maybe they ought to give that back to the people they stole it from. But that's not the job of government. Taxation should only be so high as to cover the absolutely necessary functions of government. Anything more than that is legalized larceny. So says Silent Calvin Coolidge. I mean, one of the only guys to get into office, and he may be the only guy to get into office and cut taxes 50%. And you know what happened when he did that? The economy boomed because people weren't paying these outrageous taxes. Here's how the letter ends up. Quote, "We keep hearing about affordable housing, but the question that needs to be answered is affordable for whom? Building two big schools to replace neighborhood schools in an area that will only be convenient to some of the students, meaning busing schools long distances and making parents drive them, paying people to enroll their kids in public school, taking money out of the system. I don't know why this is happening to Cheyenne, but I don't like it." Well, like I said, I don't necessarily agree with all of the conclusions. However, I do agree that if you're a government official and your only driving force is to accumulate wealth into government coffers, you've completely upended the whole purpose of government, and that is to only handle those essential things. The job of the government is actually pretty small. I like driving on nice, smooth roads. Potholes are a problem on a motorcycle. Police pretty good to have a police force, a fire department, water and sewer. You have to have infrastructure. And I'll even give you some administration to run the city. But beyond that, you could sum all of that up, I think, that the purpose of government is to protect the rights of its citizens. That's it. Anything beyond that is way outside of the bounds of government. You're not going to find anywhere in the Wyoming Constitution or the U.S. Constitution that says that it's the government's job to accumulate as much money as possible. That is not the role of government. And any politician that starts talking about government revenue, you need to be very, very wary of them. A good example of this is the schools. School districts across the state are screaming that they don't have enough money, which is an absurd claim from the very beginning. When we're spending, around $24,000, $25,000 a student, if you can't educate a kid on $25,000, you have a major, major problem. I suggest that you hand $25,000 to a homeschool parent. By the way, they probably wouldn't take it, but if they did, they could educate a whole classroom, a whole schoolhouse on $25,000 and probably pay for some pretty good computers. But the truth is, we can educate kids, and it doesn't take $25,000 to do it. And they don't need more money. The big reason why school districts are screaming that they don't have enough cash is they want to continually increase the salaries of administration and add administration to it. The irony is, in Wyoming, school enrollment is actually going down. A couple of years ago, and I haven't heard where these numbers work out today, but a couple of years ago, I think in 2024, it was Representative Nyman who was on the Education Committee. He told me that in the past 4 years, the previous four, so 2020 to 2024, enrollment in Wyoming schools went down about 1,900 students. That's statewide. During that same time period, administration and staff went up 3,600 positions. So, they more than doubled the amount of the decrease. So not only do you not have as many students to educate, you've multiplied the administration and staff by a factor of 2. You can't tell me that more administrators are needed to handle fewer students. But that is the educational paradigm that we're in right now. That we have to have more money, that we have to continually pay administrators. And another good example, and this is a comment from one of the listeners, Harry. Good point. So it wasn't this last session. It was the session before. The legislature passed an 8.5% raise for all school staff. So janitors, secretaries, teachers, everybody got an 8.5% raise. There was only one school district in the entire state of Wyoming, it was Sublette County, that actually gave that raise. And they gave more. They gave a 10% raise. Every single other school district did not give an 8.5% raise. In fact, most of them, if they gave a raise at all, gave far less, 2%, 3%. I think there was one school district in Sheridan that gave 6%, but nowhere near 8%. So where's the rest of that money? Well, it's simple. They spent it on football pads and all sorts of extraneous things that had nothing to do with the classroom. You can't continually yell that we need to pay teachers more when you steal their money, the money that was meant for them, and use it elsewhere. And by the way, this is an entirely shameless plug, but the two guys that are running against me for my precinct seat here in Sheridan, one of them was the superintendent of schools in school district number 3. His name is Chase Christensen. He was the superintendent. He was right there, right in the middle of it when they didn't give an 8.5% raise. The other guy, Shane Rader, he's the chairman of the school board in school district number 2. He's the guy that made sure that school district's budget was over twice what the entire budget of the city of Sheridan is. Now, Harry, I'll get with you later and you can give me the exact figures of what that budget is. But the last number I heard is that the yearly budget for school district number 2 was $54 million. $54 million. You know what the budget for the entire city of Sheridan was at that time? About 26. So almost twice the budget for the entire city of Sheridan. And the school district, they don't have to have a fire department. They don't have to have a a police department. They don't pay for maintenance on their schools. They don't pay for transportation. You can't tell me that it costs that much. There's no way. All right, so we're going to take. And by the way, Harry, make sure I'll try to remember to reach out to you today so I can get those figures from you. So we're going to take our next break, and when we come back, we'll get all set up for Representative Ann Lucas. She'll be joining us here in just a second. We'll do that after the break, but first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. I know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell. Iceland.
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only getting stronger. My friends, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening. You have no idea how big of a place in my heart you take up. Well, welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson with you on a Thursday. Here in just a couple minutes, Representative Ann Lucas is supposed to be joining us. She's always got a lot to say, and I enjoy having her on the program. It's always a good time. But I'm hearing reports from the Politics in the Park that there was a little bit of a crying episode. Now, there's no. You remember the movie A League of Their Own? There's no crying in baseball. Well, when you're on the stage with Harriet Hageman, I understand that you might want to cry. I get it, Jimmy. I do. But if that's actually true and somebody's got that recorded, make sure that you send it to me. Also, one of the comments, I must have missed it when I was going through the video. The U.S. didn't start World War II, Jimmy. Nope. That's not true. That did not happen. And yeah, I mean, it's politics, and politicians say a lot of crazy things. And one of the reasons why One of the reasons it flies sometimes is most of us are pretty uneducated. And it's not just not any fault of our own, I don't think. I think it's that we have busy lives and we don't really have a lot of time to pay attention to what all these politicians say. That's why you have me. All right, joining me now on the program is Representative Ann Lucas. Ann, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Good morning, David. Thanks for giving me a little bit of time. I always enjoy being on your show.
Well, yeah, I enjoy having you. So you're running for re-election, House District 43, right?
Yes.
And you actually got a little bit bigger of a box on the eastern side, thanks to Dan Zwanitzer, so you can represent his neighborhood too.
Well, interestingly, before my former opponent redistricted, I wasn't in House District 43. I was in House District 10. and John Eklund was my representative. And then Mr. Zwanitzer decided that he needed to move into a new house that wasn't in his district. So he made this area his district. And so my joke was, I didn't move to Wyoming 25 years ago to run against Dan Zwanitzer. He moved into my neighborhood to run against me.
By the way, what Ann and I are talking about is during redistricting back in 2020. I guess it was actually like 2022, excuse me. Thank you for correcting me, Ann. The Corporations Committee was tasked with figuring out where all the district lines were going. Well, at the same time, Dan Zwanitzer had moved into House District 10, and he bought a ranch, and it was just over the boundary line. And one day, I just searched what is his address, and it popped up right outside of House District 43. Well, a couple of days later, when I looked at the maps, you had to zoom way in, and then he drew a little box around his neighborhood. And the episode is called, it's a wonderfully fun episode. It's called Why the Little Box, Dan. But anyway, enough about him. Let's talk about you. So you're running for re-election. Talk to me. Why are you running for re-election? What do you want to do?
First, I have to say it's just been the biggest honor and thrill of my life to represent the people of House District 43. I'll tell you, I've had a blast. I've learned a lot. It turns out that old dogs can learn new tricks, and I am actually a pretty good legislator. I can write laws all by myself now. And
not with AI?
Well, yeah. Anything you write with AI, folks, in the long run takes longer because you have to check everything so carefully. I've had a blast doing this, and we've gotten a lot of good work accomplished, and I'm very proud of my record, but also of the conservatives' actions in the House the past two sessions. We've done some really great stuff.
I agree.
And we're not done. We're not done. We've got to get more done for the people of Wyoming. I never forgot for a moment who I work for. I don't work for Laramie County. I don't work for the city of Cheyenne. I don't work for the state of Wyoming, even though they do pay me a pathetic amount of money once in a while. I work for the voters. And the voters sent us a clear message 2 years ago when so many of us new legislators got elected. And number one on the list then was property taxes. And they sent us a whole long list of things to do. And we've worked hard on those, and we've gotten many of those things accomplished.
Okay, so what are your priorities this time around, Ann?
Yeah. So right now, I just commissioned a poll in House District 43 to learn what the voters in District 43 want regarding data centers. It's a very hot issue in my House district because we've got so many of them. We've got a bunch that are built already. We've got a bunch that are being built already. And then we're going to have more because Microsoft is going for another 3,400 acres. And so it's a big deal issue. And I want to know what people think about it. I'm not going to try and guess because there are so many strong feelings on both sides of that issue. I want to get it right for them. So that's one. The Revenue Committee just recently, last week, did ask for a bill draft to remove the sales tax exemption from the data centers enjoy on data center equipment. And that's quite a lucrative discount for them on the sales tax. I've talked to people from Microsoft, and they don't really even care all that much about the discount. They'll take it because we'll give it to them.
Well, sure.
But
why wouldn't they?
Wyoming is still a really good place to do business, and they're happy to be here. And they've told me that now several times. So data centers is a big deal. We're going to continue working on property taxes. The People's Initiative is on the ballot this election in November, and that will be if it passes, a 50% cut to residential property taxes. It's not going to be an additional 50%, folks. So if you're getting the 25% now, you're not going to get it 75% off.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I know. You can get up to 50% though off, and we'll have to craft that legislation. And I expect it'll pass.
I think it will.
Why wouldn't you vote for it? You know, even the people who say, oh my gosh, don't cut the taxes anymore. Every one of them takes the tax cut. I look them up. It's public record.
Well, the one that surprised me, and this is how scared they are, but it was a post by God, every time I try to avoid her, I have to keep mentioning her. Gail Simmons. I know. She had a post yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, and it says basically, if you're going to vote for this 50% reduction, that means you're lazy. Wow.
I saw that.
Wow.
So that's the sales technique that I don't understand, which is, here, come buy this thing from me. You're so stupid. You must buy this from me.
Yes.
And
yes.
That sales tactic never works. You know, making the people that you want to be on your side feel stupid or not worthy. I don't get it. And Gail, take a lesson in sales. You know, don't make people feel stupid.
All right, so let's talk about, you and I had a conversation the other day about data centers, and I kind of think we might be on different sides of the coin on this one. But just give me your, what's Representative Ann Lucas's opinion on the proliferation of all these data centers around the state?
I understand why Laramie County is attractive for the data centers. We are right there at the crux of two interstates. We have really good internet. We have optical cable everywhere. And we're really close to Denver, if you count. You know, we're the closest to Denver of all you guys out there in the state of Wyoming. And that's important. We have power here. Black Hills Energy produces more power than we use in Laramie County. So I get all of that. I like technology. I'm the tech girl. I'm the one that helps folks in the house adapt to new applications and how to use their cell phone some days. You know, I really do like technology. The problem that comes up is that so many of these data centers are in residential areas. And I feel that this activity is encroaching on other people's property rights. And this is the thing that our county commissioners didn't take into consideration, apparently, when I don't even understand their zoning laws. They just go, oh yes, we're going to call data centers in a business park. Voila. The Archer Center, where the fairgrounds are, is now a business park, apparently, because we have a data center there. And it is a quarter of a mile from houses, and it's one of those crypto data centers, so it's very, very loud. And I actually just shot a video over there, and it was pegging 80 to 84 dBs outside on a windy day. And it's very loud.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but how far away from it were you when you took the video?
At their fence line. So they have a parking lot, and it's a good sized lot. Incidentally, the owner of that data center is a seated House rep, and he just bought 65 more acres of land from the county, Laramie County. And I have a public records request out right now to see what kind of deal got made. Did this go to public bid? How did they evaluate this land? Because he's paying just about a little over half price what his current property is valued at. For more land. And it'll be interesting to see. I want to know whether they were diligent in how they decided to sell this land to a politician who will vote in their favor. I suspect.
And I appreciate you mentioning the private property rights out of it, because I think that with a lot of these things, we end up injecting emotional arguments into it. It's there's a lot of posts online that, this isn't Wyoming values and it's going to destroy the landscape and on. Okay, all of those are emotional arguments. Okay. Wyoming is a business-friendly state, and this is my, and I think I told you this is my opinion of it, that if everybody is on the same playing field, that we're not getting subsidies, that you're jumping through all the same regulatory hoops, you're not getting special treatment, you're respecting everybody else's rights, I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to set up a data center. If you buy the property, if you purchase the water rights, or you're paying for somebody else, and you're everything's above board, I don't think that we should have a problem with it. But I think you bring up an interesting point that if you set up a giant factory, this is the reason why we have zoning laws, by the way. If you set up a giant factory right next to somebody's house and it's it's making noise 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, well, that's infringing on somebody else's rights as well. So, I think that's a question we need to handle. How do we deal with that?
And I agree with you on that, David. You made some lucid and valid points. However, I do agree with you 100% about the zoning, because it appears that the zoning is fluid and it can change depending on how the county wants to change it. And they do. We're not talking a shoe store here. It's not like, a shoe store is getting built next to me, but these centers are zoned as commercial.
Like 1,000 shoe stores.
Well, yeah. And with the lights on and the generators going all the time. And these should be zoned industrial, and they should be taxed as industrial properties. And we in revenue are doing a bill draft on that one too, so that they won't be taxed as commercial real estate. They'll be taxed as industrial real estate, because it is an industry. They make something, they're doing something. This isn't a shoe store. It's not McDonald's, and that's the thing, is that we can figure out a way for these entities and residents to coexist, but they don't have to coexist in the same 1 mile of property. These can be put farther away. We've got a lot of land out here, and it's not that much farther away from both interstates. We've got a lot of vacant land in Laramie County. So we have to deal with what we've got already in the best way that we can. And I'm happy to say that Microsoft has been very amenable to that. They want to be good neighbors. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that, because these are done deals. The ones that are in the works, there's contracts. We can't change that. We can change the taxing, of course. But the rest of it, we're kind of stuck with them. And I've got 4 of them in my house district that are a quarter of a mile away from houses.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
So we're going to have to interact with them and negotiate with them on things like noise, sound, lights. Those are things that good neighbors will do. And I'm confident that they will. Clean Spark was amenable when the mayor stepped in, because that part of my house district is in Cheyenne, and got them to cut their noise back by actually operating a little less. And the folks, the neighbors in that area were okay with that, but now they're expanding, they're building even more. And so all of the noise, of course, is right back on.
Well, and I struggle with this a lot. There was a time, even when I grew up, right? If you had a problem with your neighbor, you went over and knocked on his door and said, "Hey man, your dogs were barking like all night long last night. Can we do something about that?" And you went and talked to your neighbor. Instead of going to the police or calling in a noise complaint, the next morning you just went and said, "Hey, can we work on this?" And I think that's what we need to do. Granted, we're dealing with government, and you got to do things the right way there. But I have often said that industry, it is a fallacy that most businesses are these evil corporations. They're not. The truth is that most businesses want to do things the right way because it's far less expensive. You don't want to do a half-hearted job drilling a well, because if you do, it's going to blow out and you're going to have to go fix it.
Sure.
It's much better to do things the right way. And, let's be honest, if you're setting up a giant data center, that's a huge amount of money that you're putting out and, dumping into the local economy and into your own investment. So I think there's a way that we can make this so that we can both coexist. I've got a question from a viewer, Samantha, and I think you can see this on the screen if I put this up there.
Oh, there you go.
But it's the question is, how can you help the rising cost of rental and home costs? There's massive raise in rental was said due to higher wages at the data center. But my 20-year-old college daughter can't afford a one-bedroom apartment. What do you say, Representative Lucas?
Oh, that's a tough situation. This is the supply and demand issue. Right now we have, and it's not data center employees, by the way, that are taking up all of these rentals and buying houses. It is the construction staff, and some of those folks are pretty well paid. And I have a couple of housing areas in my district, Saddle Ridge and Sun Valley, that are both very concentrated populations. The houses, those are subdivisions. And we get a lot of folks who come in for a few years, military people too, by the way, are nice additions to our population. And they're very well paid. And the owners of these houses or the properties that are being rented see an opportunity to make more money, and they are charging higher. There's not a lot that the government can do about this. This is how capitalism works. And the government doesn't own these houses and should not. By the way, my opinion on government housing is that it should be limited to prisons and base housing for the military. That's it. The government should not own any property or be in any rental situations, but they are in some cases. And I think that eventually this will even out, but it is tough for the 20-year-olds. I'll tell you what, I know of several family friends who, you get yourself 2 or 3 roommates, and you get the best thing you can get for the money, and you tough it out for a while. And it does get better.
It's funny. I had a conversation with my dad the other day, and I asked him, I'm like, okay, when you graduated college, did a lot of your friends and classmates and colleagues, did they get right out of college and buy a house? Because in the 70s in Buffalo, Wyoming, housing prices were pretty darn cheap if you could find one. And his answer, I wasn't expecting it, but he said, heck no. He said most people had to have 2 or 3 roommates, and you went and got a job and you saved enough for a down payment, and then you went and bought a house. He said, but many of the people he went to school with, there was 2, sometimes 3 couples living in a house just so that they could afford it. And by the way, Samantha says, by the way, Ann, I'm on your side. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
I think that part of the miscommunication, I guess, problem we're having in both sides communicating, and I spoke about this yesterday on the podcast, that one side thinks that the government needs to be involved and that the government should fix all of these problems, whether it's affordable housing or data centers or whatever. And then we conservatives say, no, the government shouldn't be involved at all. Because with the housing market, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong here, Ann, but I think the reason why prices are one of the big reasons prices are through the roof is government is involved. Because government can build, they've got an unlimited checkbook. They got the taxpayer dole that they build all these buildings on, and it drives out your private developers who otherwise would have put up a big housing complex, and we end up with rabbit cages all over the place. But the best way to reduce prices is to get government out of the way, in my opinion.
David, I'm 100% in agreement with that. The government, first off, folks, be honest, is not competent and not qualified to own, run, maintain, build property. residential property especially. I mean, gosh, they shouldn't even be building buildings like on military bases sometimes. I've lived on enough base housing to know, that is probably the most expensive housing in the world. And
Yeah.
it is just bare bones.
Crappy.
Yeah, it's very strippo, put it that way. So the government's not good at this. Why do we give them this power? The city of Cheyenne does TIFs, and they're using taxpayer dollars.
Don't get me started on
to
those.
help outsiders, people from outside of Wyoming. There's financing infrastructure expenses like plumbing, sewers, that kind of stuff, so that outsiders from South Dakota, North Dakota can come and build luxury apartment buildings. And I asked the mayor once when we met for coffee, I said, when do we get our money back? He goes, oh, we never get our money back. I go, well, I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. I thought, yes, you have to wait a really long time. You may not see payback in your lifetime, but we should get the money back.
Yes.
And we don't. So Cheyenne's got it a little bit backwards on that respect. But this is not the government's job, and they're not good at it. They should do what they're good at.
Yes. And it amazes me that most of these folks that are, that are in favor of so-called affordable housing, which it's not affordable, by the way, but the folks that are pushing this have never lived next to a housing project. And that's what we're talking about. When, you've lived other places. I lived in Virginia and Tennessee for a while. At one time, I lived right next door to a housing project. Government-built housing. It was so affordable. And it was a crime-ridden, crappy neighborhood.
So I have a quick story on that. I grew up in Chicago, and I didn't know very many kids who were poorer than me. And if it weren't for churches, we probably wouldn't have eaten nearly as well. And the neighborhood that I lived in and went to high school in was in the same neighborhood as Cabrini Green, which was one of the most notorious public housing projects. Multi-stories, high-rise buildings.
Yeah, huge.
And literally 2-3 generations of women lived there and on public assistance and paying very little, if any, rent. And the cycle just kept perpetuating. All of those projects have been since torn down in Chicago because Chicago understood that that was a big, big failure. And it was not a success. It was dangerous. Nobody should live like that. The buildings were in horrible condition and the crime was just through the roof. You couldn't in the 80s get cable TV installed if you lived in some of those projects because installers wouldn't go there. You couldn't order a pizza for delivery.
No, they wouldn't deliver it.
No. And that's government in action. And, now Chicago owns houses and smaller apartment buildings, and they've got them all scattered throughout the city. And I suspect it's still not a success, but at least it's not putting thousands of people in the same cement box.
All right, Ann, let's run you through the paces a bit here. So you're running for re-election. You do have an opponent. Why should Laramie County voters vote for you again?
First, folks, I just want to say that it will never be my intention to hold my opponent's youth and inexperience against her. I will not do that for political purposes at all. I have just paraphrased something. You can all just think how witty I am. So first off, if my opponent were conservative, she wouldn't be running against me. She'd be working with me, knowing that I'm not going to be in the House forever. Literally, I'm not going to be in the House forever because I'm already kind of getting old and, but young enough to do this job for a couple more times. And so conservatives don't run against conservatives. And, she likes the sex books in the library. She said we should trust the libraries to do that for us. And I spoke at the Laramie County GOP barbecue the other night and Tuesday night. And, I brought books with me and I spoke. We all got our 3-minute speech. And I told folks, come over to my table and look at these books. If you haven't seen them, you've got to see them. People were horrified. I wish I had thought to record the responses because that's an issue that it hasn't gone away. We need to get that fixed. And the fix is not to let the library do what they want. property taxes. I'm talking to people right now that they're thrilled with the 25% cut, and they're really looking forward to a 50% cut. And they're saying, and other people are saying, oh my God, we're going to have to fire the firemen and the police. We won't be able to afford it. And I will tell you that I know we have some issues with some special districts in what are considered hardship counties. And the first thing, I'm a longtime accountant and a budgeter, and I just love to look at their budgets because I bet you we can find some ways to economize. Maybe not enough. Maybe we're going to have to do something for some of these hardship counties. I don't know the answer to that. I do not live in a hardship county. Folks, I live in Laramie County, and I can prove everything I say about their financials. And they have actually banked their property tax income for 3 years in a row. And I can prove this. And so we have fire districts that need a little help. Laramie County's got hundreds of millions of dollars in reserve, and they don't spend all the money they get. They can help the fire districts out, give them a couple of $1 million. It's nothing to them. Their 25% tax cut equaled $3.4 million in 2025 out of a couple $100 million budget. Give me a break.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Unless you were not done. Okay. Next question. Are you a member of the Freedom Caucus? And if so, why do you take your orders from the DC overlord?
I love that question. I am a member of the Wyoming House Freedom Caucus. I joined that group because I know these people. I've known them for years. I've been a political junkie, as John Bear called me years ago, for many years. And I've gotten to know legislators over the years, and many of them know me. And these people think like me. We believe in God. We believe in small government. We believe in low taxes. We believe in transparency and accountability. Above all, we believe in the Wyoming Republican Party platform. The left, they don't even read the platform. They have no idea what it says. So that's why John Bear said one time that he can't imagine who would be brave enough to tell me how to vote. And you know what? Nobody has ever told me how to vote, other than a couple of my constituents who say, I want you to vote this way on this bill. And we discuss it. And I do take my constituents' opinions into consideration because they're the ones that put me here. I work for them. I work for the people of Wyoming. I don't work for the government. I don't work for Washington, D.C. And yeah, I voted for Donald Trump 3 times. And if he ran again for something, I'd probably vote for him if I could. But he doesn't tell me what to do either. I'd love it if he'd try.
It might be fun.
I'd buy him coffee. Let's go. But nobody is telling me what to do other than the people of House District 43.
All right. So how do you respond to the charge that when like before the last session, you guys came in, by you guys, I mean, there was lots of posts by the Freedom Caucus saying we're going to cut spending. We're going to slash and burn. That's the phrase that I've heard, that I've seen over and over. We're going to slash and burn, and we're going to fix all this stuff. And when the session was over, you guys really didn't accomplish that much. How do you respond to that?
Well, we did accomplish quite a lot. First off, it took me a little bit of learning. I'm an impatient person. I don't like to waste time. I'm a go-getter. I like to work hard and I like to get a lot done. But this is not fast work. You don't add water and stir with a tea bag in there and suddenly you have a cup of tea. This takes time. It is intended that we will debate. It is intended that we're going to argue over principles, over bills, over wording, over the. It is
sometimes she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, it is. Well, I actually spent a little bit of time talking about apostrophes. Okay. Because somebody wanted to change drivers to driver apostrophe S.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time on that one. And it's fun. It's fun. But the thing of it is that once the House does work, we can all be in an agreement. And we had issues, we had bills go through that had near 100% or 100% votes. So the entire House agreed on this, or nearly the entire House. But then there's this other House. We are a bicameral legislature. We have two houses, the House and the Senate, the higher
Right. Well, they're high, all
chamber.
right.
Yeah. And so the thing of it is those folks aren't like us. They're different. They write bills differently. They think differently. Their values are different. And we cannot control what they do. And anybody who thinks we can should call me and tell me the secret on how we can do that. And what I mostly tell people who don't understand this is, let's figure it out. And maybe you should run for office and come here and sit by me, because you can help me then if you know all the answers on how to make that happen. It's a learning experience to figure out this is how our founding fathers intended legislation to work. It shouldn't be easy for us to write laws. It shouldn't be easy for us to do things that change your life.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, Ann, that there were a couple of major things that did go through and the governor did sign. One of those was the recalibration bill.
Huge.
Yeah, huge. That hadn't been done in 15 years. And there, we can argue about, the substance of the bill, but it hadn't been done in 15 years. For the first time in a really long time, the budget that was passed was less than what the governor wanted. Okay, granted, not by a whole bunch, but I think it was still like, 120 million less or something like that. I mean, but it was less than what the governor wanted. Every other legislature that I've watched, and since I started my show, it has always been more than what the governor asked for. Of course, conservatives have only been in charge of the House for 2 years. So, that's only one budget cycle. So, a lot of these arguments are, and I'll let you respond here in just a second. A lot of these arguments are, and they're not even arguments really, they're just emotional statements that really don't have anything backing them up.
So first off, folks, when we're talking about government spending, the government isn't spending their money. They don't have money. The government is spending your money. And we must be good stewards of your money. We don't want to throw it away. We don't want to spend it on bad things. We don't want to spend it on things that don't do us any good in the long run. And recalibration is a really good example of that. We haven't touched recalibration in 15 years. It's hard work. Just reading the bill is hard, and I've read it 4 times already, okay? I can defend this. The thing of it is that we know we spend a lot on education, but we also know that we're not getting our money's worth on this because our children can't read. And the statistics are there. I just posted on my Facebook an article that Representative Tom Kelly posted on his Facebook, and it's written by college professors and talking about how kids go to college and they can't read.
Yeah.
And we're letting
it's a bad problem.
So we're spending all this money. World-class money should result in world-class education. And I'll tell you what, I know a lot of teachers. We've got great teachers in Wyoming. I know many of them. I worked at the Teachers Credit Union forever, okay? They're good teachers. They know how to teach. They're just not allowed to. They don't have time because they're spending so much time and energy on stupid things. The Laramie County School District 1 superintendent told me that the paras spend a lot of their time changing diapers. And I said, for real? And I said, like what? Once in a while? Yeah, he said, well, what happens, David, is apparently you don't have to potty train your children when you send them to kindergarten and first grade. And
oh, Lord.
we just let our staff deal with this. And I'm sorry, I'm a little harder on this. I had children and I had to do potty training. Let me tell you, my kids had to know how to tie their shoes when they started kindergarten. Okay. But first time Johnny poops his pants at school, you call mom or dad and you say, come get him.
Yeah.
And the second time he does it, you do the same thing. And when this keeps happening and mom and dad have to deal with Johnny pooping his pants, Johnny will get potty trained. Now,
that's astounding.
There are children, of course, with special needs, but I've asked the questions, and those are very few and far between, and it's not limited to just kindergartners then in that case. And they're very special situations, and we have special staff for that. But educators and para-educators should not have to spend their time doing that.
That's crazy. It's absolutely, absolutely astounding.
Steve Johnson and I met with him one day during the session, and we sat in the majority floor leader's office for almost 2 hours talking to him about the recal bill and what his ideas were. And the recal bill actually was very good. It is different, and people don't like change. But the problem is that, we would give mountains of money to school districts, and then they would say, but we're short of teachers. And it's like, but we just gave you a gajillion boxes of money. How are you spending this? And we're never allowed to know how they spend it. But this is your money, folks. And this is billions of dollars of your money, okay? Between the federal money, which is your money too, and the state money, which is your money. We're talking billions of dollars. And I was an internal auditor for a number of years, and I know that we can always do a better job. And yet we're not allowed to question any of this. So the recal bill was a success. And I think it, and I think that given a couple more years working in it, the school districts will also appreciate it. And you know what? They can make it better.
What's fascinating about this whole thing is the people complaining about the recalibration bill are the folks in education. But they don't realize that if they have a problem with the silo, which, by the way, I've talked about this a lot on the show, but essentially money meant for the classroom has to stay in the classroom. And so if they're making the argument that, well, now that you've done this, we don't have money for activities. Well, that literally means that you were taking the money that was meant for the classroom and spending it on activities. And so now that we're forcing you to do it, now you can't spend it, on the football pads. Meaning, of course, that your focus has not been on education, which is why 70% of incoming freshmen into Wyoming community colleges can't read, or they have to. That's kind of a exaggeration, but I was told at Sheridan College, which, by the way, I went to school there. I have a degree from there. Sheridan College is great. But their admissions department told me that of the incoming freshmen, 70% have to take remedial courses. 70.
I went to college as an adult, as an old person. I wanted to graduate before my kids, but I didn't. I graduated the year after my kids. And I spent a lot of time at community colleges because that was affordable. And I would take one class every semester, sometimes two. And then finally, one time, a counselor said, "Are you ever going to graduate?" And I turned out with just running a degree completion program, I was able to get a bachelor's degree. But one of the things I knew right off, when I moved to Laramie County 25 years ago, I had to take a placement test to take a class at LCCC. And I was a little offended. And long story short, I passed the math and the reading test. I can math and read. And the gal who graded my test, she goes, "Wow, you did really good." I said, "I can really read."
All right, Ann. Well, I got to run. But if my viewers want to get a hold of you, or more specifically, voters in House District 43 want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
A couple of ways. I am on Facebook, Ann Lucas for Wyoming. If you look Ann Lucas in Wyoming on Facebook, you're going to find my page. I have a website, AnnLucas4Wyoming.com. I have a phone number, and it's everywhere, folks. I'm just like Chuck Gray, 307-214-9199. Text me first. I'm a lot more likely to answer because then I'll know, it's a constituent, and I'll talk to anybody in Wyoming.
All right, Ann, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining me this morning, and keep me posted how things are going.
Always a pleasure, David. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Well, that was Ann Lucas, representative from House District 43 down in Laramie County. We're going to take our last break, and we'll finish up when we come back. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And by the way, if you are running for office, I tend to focus more on state level offices, the House, the Senate. But if you're running and you haven't heard from me, don't think that means I don't want to talk to you, because I do want to talk to you. Just I haven't sent you an email yet. But go ahead and reach out to me if you want to be on the program. The phone number. Yeah, I'm not giving you my phone number. But my email address is david@cowboystatepolitics.com. Shoot me an email and we'll set up an interview. Now, the anointed one, the self-proclaimed savior, Barack Obama, has a new pronouncement. I kid you not, my friends. He says that he's like George Washington. I'm not even kidding. Apparently there was one of George Washington's lesser-known speeches that that he said stuff like this.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Yeah. Total George Washington. And then there was this.
If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help.
Yeah.
There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we had that allowed you to thrive.
All of it.
Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Josh Durrell, is that you? I kid you not, my friends. Obama says that he is like George Washington. From MSN, Obama describes post-presidency life as a player to coach. And I quote, former President Barack Obama said that he has transitioned, I have no doubt, Barry, I have no doubt, transitioned from player to coach since leaving office, seeking to encourage the next generation of leaders while maintaining a quieter life with his family. If there is anything about Barack Obama, it is not that he's quiet. Obama told ABC News in a segment that aired Wednesday that his goal after leaving office was to mimic George Washington by serving as president and then going back home. And my friends, that is exactly what Barack Obama has done. My goal was to, look at the example of our first president, George Washington. I don't have a horse to get on, but he kind of said, all right, I've done my stint and now I'm going back home. Well, that's kind of true. I mean, George Washington did say that he was done and he didn't really want anything more to do with politics. But that's not what you did, Barry. It's not what you did at all. The former president has campaigned with Democratic candidates and pushed back on the current administration, including condemning Donald Trump for reposting a video portraying him and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. I don't even really know if that happened. I didn't see it. But, it's Barry, and if he's going to call you all sorts of things like Nazi and Hitler, I don't know exactly if he did that, but I'm sure somewhere he alluded to it somewhere. Most recently, Barack Obama criticized the Trump administration's peace deal to end the Iran war. Definitely George Washington-esque, arguing it's doubtful the agreement will differ significantly from the 2015 nuclear deal, except that this one says they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. I mean, that might be a big difference. The pallets of cash delivered on an airplane, that might be a little bit different, Barry. I'm not sure. While the former president said he intended to leave the political arena during his final news conference as president in 2017, Obama said he would speak out when core values are at stake, and it would merit him speaking out. When asked how Obama finds a balance between being quiet and being vocal, the former president said, "You pick and choose your spots," adding that he doesn't suggest he's done it perfectly. Really? Well, I'm sure George Washington would agree, and I have no doubt that, your presidency, Barack Obama, certainly mirrors the good George Washington, especially when you said things like this.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor under the reform proposals that we put forward.
Yeah, I'm sure
like your
George Washington was
insurance
totally
plan, you
about
can keep
health care.
If you like the plan you have, you can keep it. If you like the doctor you have, you can keep your doctor too.
Yeah.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor.
And the most George Washington-esque quotation of all.
People have been beaten down so long, and they feel so betrayed by government.
Well, it's not surprising then that they get bitter and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them.
Yeah.
A way to explain their frustrations.
Yeah. So, they're just clinging to their guns and their religion, and they're all a bunch of racists anyway. I'm sure you took that right out of George Washington's Rules of Civility. No, probably not that one. No, and you probably didn't take it out of his personal writings, of which I have read many. But this is what liberal politicians do. They know that most people are too darn busy to sit down and, comb through everything they say. And a lot of people are just ignorant of history. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's their fault for not continuing their history or continuing their learning. But it's not their fault that they went through a public education system that told you that our founding fathers were a bunch of slave owners that hated black people. That has, for generations, that's what we have taught our kids. And the truth couldn't be any further from that. All right, yes, most of them were slave owners, but you have to judge history in the time that it happened. You can't use values and happenings and things that we look at the world from today and apply those to historical context. It's called historiography. It's judging the past by the present. The truth is that things have changed. And over 250 years, this country has changed dramatically. And so you have to, when you're talking about the founding fathers, you have to judge them in the context in which the events were happening. Did Thomas Jefferson and George Washington own slaves? Yes, they did. But George Washington also wrote that owning slaves was a stain on his soul. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington both tried to outlaw slavery. George Washington tried it multiple times in the Virginia Assembly. And they passed it. And several times, the King of England said no. So you have to judge the past in the time at which it was happening. Was owning slaves wrong? Yes, absolutely. But at the time, what could you do? Now, and I don't think that that's a cop out. I think that that's judging the past in the context of which those events happened. And both of them in later years said that it was wrong. So I don't know, I don't know how Barack Obama thinks that he is in any way comparable to George Washington. Many of the things that he did, and let me see if I got another one here. I think I just played them. Yeah. But many of the things that he said, he did, that he's currently saying, that he's currently doing, building a giant Death Star-esque edifice to himself. Pretty sure George Washington didn't do that either, though we did later, the Washington Monument. But it was not the brutalesque and the style in which the architecture of Obama's library is called brutalism. But anyway, it is, it's shocking. And because some people, probably most of the folks that follow Barack Obama are, fairly ignorant of history, but maybe, just maybe, this is going along with the plan from the very beginning. Who could forget when Michelle Obama was on the campaign trail during his first campaign, and she said this?
And Barack knows that we are going to have to make sacrifices. We are going to have to change our conversation. We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. We're going to have to move into a different place as a nation to provide the kind of future that we all want desperately for our children. And he is the man to do it.
We're going to have to change our history, our traditions, our very way of thinking. Why do we have to change history? Why do we have to change our traditions? Well, the reason you have to do that is so that your husband later on can say, I'm just like George Washington. Politicians lie, my friends, and ex-politicians lie even more than the current ones, if you believe that that's even possible. And most of what they lie about is their record. None of us should ever forget what Barack Obama did to us with Obamacare. None of us should forget the things that he said, that we're all just bitter people in flyover country that cling to our guns and our religion. Nobody should forget that he said, if you own a business and you are working hard to make that business successful so that you can create a better life for yourself, that you didn't build that, somebody else did. None of those things should ever be forgotten, and as long as I'm around, they won't be. My friends, we have to ask politicians the tough questions. And even if you happen to like the politician that you're interviewing, this is why you heard me with Ann Lucas. I like Ann. I've had lots of conversations with her, but still, I asked her, hey, how do you respond to this, that you guys didn't get anything done, or that do you take your orders from the evil DC overlord? You got to ask those questions, even if we like them. You got to find out who these people are and hold them accountable to it. That's what the whole point of this program is. All right. Well, that pretty much does it for today's installment of the broadcast. Tomorrow, we're going to have Open Line Friday, as we do every Friday. Your chance to weigh in and direct the program as you will. I'm terrified. Every time I hit that call button, you never know what's going to happen. So it's Open Line Friday tomorrow. Don't miss it. We're going to have a lot of fun. And anyway, for now, my friends, that'll do it. From the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson. This is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good afternoon, my friends. See you tomorrow.